Hold on, actually, there we go. It'll help if you guys can hear us. Hey guys, what's up? Hope you guys are doing well. Yeah, you got me and Tim and I. What's the proper pronunciation?
I
Or
think Tim
the
and I,
Tim
right?
and I think that's proper. It's like the grammar, I guess. It's starting it off perfectly.
I
This is live, but no, yeah. We got Tim.
think Tim and I,
Super
right?
super excited to have Tim back on. For if you guys remember, Tim was here. Time flies, so I'm not sure. Maybe 2 months ago,
It's
month.
been like 2 or 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been busy in the meantime too. You're quite a busy guy. So, but Tim came on and showed us some of his workflow when it comes to working in SolidWorks, and kind of just talked about some of his progress in the school and the classes and all that great stuff. So, yeah, tons of awesome stuff. And so today, what we're going to be focusing on is after Tim did that stream, and he was one of my students, I thought, okay, it would be really awesome to have Tim take main title design and then help him with his personal project, which he's going to go through today. He's going to talk about in detail. I'm going to pass the screen over to Tim, and Tim's going to go along and share all this awesomeness, which is going to be great. But yeah, it's going to be a great stream. We're going to cover a lot of information. There's going to be a lot of questions I'm sure you guys are going to have. So if you do have questions, Joe's going to be in the chat so he can handle them, and he's going to send them to me via chat. And then I'll do my best to feed them into the conversation. If you need to ask a question, just make sure you get Joe's attention. So he's in there. So, but yeah, this is going to be awesome. So, yeah, without further ado, it's Tim Zarki, the man, the myth, the legend. So, yeah, yeah,
It's quite the intro.
yeah. Welcome
Thanks,
aboard.
man.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I know you're busy. So, but this is we were planning to do this for a little bit of time now, and covering the project that you had worked on through the class and stuff. And I think one of the things we wanted to show with is not only your creative prowess, but then also how to take a class and continue working and learning from it, and how to evolve your abilities to take something that I might have taught and then go and take it into a whole nother realm, which opens up to a lot of different possibilities. And so with this class, I didn't necessarily have Tim follow the course verbatim. What we did is we shifted things around based on his strengths and weaknesses, so that he could really learn as much as he could and then get something great at the end of the experience. And the cool thing too is if you are signed up for the class, like, you have access to this information and this, like, basically our complete journey from the beginning of his project all the way until the end of it. You have all that documentation. So let's say, like, 3 years ago you bought my class. It's not that old yet. It's maybe like a year old now, but 5 years from now or something, I'll do another mentorship, or I do them all the time. I'm doing one right now with Leo. And you just get that content. It's just like free content that goes into your class, and it's just like helps propel you to understand and learn, and you get to see like Tim's journey and stuff. So constant added value. So I'm not going to sit here and sell the class, because I don't need to sell the class. It sells itself. But I'm just kind of letting you guys know, like, kind of from a perspective, this is what makes the school special, in my opinion. And constantly growing, classes are constantly adapting, and more people are coming in and applying it. So I'll pass I got your screen here. I'm going to pass the screen right over to you, and then we'll just kind of go through your experience with the class and everything, and then kind of just talk about what you ended up doing, and
Yeah.
all that kind of fun stuff, some trials and tribulations and stuff. So, but you're live,
Great.
you're up on there now too. So with your
Sweet.
crazy widescreen monitor.
My super duper ultra wide screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Ash was saying, basically what he gave me the opportunity to do, which I'm super grateful for, is to go through, the main title design class, but kind of break the rules a little bit and not follow it exactly. 'Cause I don't know if you guys were here for the last live stream, but if you were, I showed some of the stuff that I was working on for this kind of camera that I designed. And all of this was being created kind of with the idea in mind that I was ultimately going to create some sort of a film about the camera to showcase the design and kind of tease it a little bit and get people excited about it. It's a purely like concept project. Like, it's not a real camera. Not, it's not going to be manufactured anytime soon. But it's just kind of a cool portfolio piece to, provoke some discussion about photography and the nature of digital cameras, and just, show off a whole bunch of different skills. So this is some of the stuff that I was kind of sharing last time. So I was just mostly focused on, prototyping all of the internal details, figuring out kind of the basically just like look dev stuff, doing materials and details and everything. And then for this class, for the apprenticeship that I was doing, I basically started from scratch and decided to figure out kind of what the narrative was going to be for the film. Because up to this point, like I had really just been working on getting the camera to look the way that I wanted it to. But I hadn't really thought too deeply yet about like what was the actual story that I wanted to tell, and how I was going to approach it. So the main title design class was kind of the perfect opportunity for me to work with Ash to help figure that out and kind of land on a narrative that made a lot of sense for the ideas that I was trying to convey. It gave me an opportunity to test out a lot of different kind of like different storytelling tools and different visual metaphors and things, see what was working and what wasn't working so well. And then ultimately create a whole bunch of style frames that fully kind of encompass the story that I'm going to be telling in the film, which I am now starting to work on animating. So it's been a really, really long journey. It's been a lot of work, just because, this project encompasses so many different, technical, I guess, skill sets that I'm trying to develop, not just, working in Cinema 4D and working in CAD and making nice textures and materials in Octane, but then also like, animation, motion design, some visual effects stuff in Houdini, bringing all of that together, and then also just trying to tell a really compelling story that's well designed and everything's thought through. So it's taken me a really long time to get even to this point, and I'm still not done yet. So I have a lot of animation work to do on the horizon, but I am super happy with kind of the end result of the mentorship, and how I was able to tell a really, what I think is going to hopefully be a really exciting and successful sort of visual narrative about the camera.
Yeah.
So kind of the first step in that process was to sort of develop a storyboard, just doing like super rough little thumbnail sketches on paper. When I draw, I do everything like with just like a Sharpie or like a basic pen on paper, and super rough. Like I don't really, it's funny, like in design school, like we all learned how to draw really, really well. And we spent like a huge amount of time on like design sketching, and I don't really use that skill set anymore, to be honest. Like I just try and like, get the ideas down as fast as I can, super roughly, and then as fast as possible, like take them into the digital realm, and whether that's building them out in 3D, like if I'm designing something in CAD, I just try and like capture the essence of what it is that I'm trying to do, and then go build it as quickly as possible, basically. And the same kind of applied to this. So I really just wanted to get the ideas down on paper as fast as I could, so that I could test them out, set them to music, animate them a little bit, see what the pacing felt like, see how the flow of ideas was working, and fix things that weren't working, and do that process over again until it was right. So I ended up kind of going through this storyboarding process. I don't know, maybe like it was at least 3 times, I feel like, before I really landed on like the the narrative that I felt was going to work. So it was kind of a long process, but basically like the actual narrative that I came up with is, well, this is like the early like version, so this is not the final, but I really wanted to kind of like showcase the process of the camera sort of being born, which is not really like a new idea. Like there's a lot of consumer electronics product launch videos where they're showing like the manufacturing process and kind of showing you how this device comes into being, basically. Like Apple does a lot of stuff like that. Microsoft does a lot of stuff like that too. So it's not really like a new idea. It's almost kind of like a trope, I guess, in the like world of product design advertisement. But I kind of wanted to put my own spin on it, and Ash really encouraged me to think a little bit more abstractly about it. So instead of having everything be super literal and like just representing the manufacturing process exactly as it happens in real life, um, kind of pepper in some more kind of like abstract, symbolic, sort of metaphorical stuff to help explain kind of like the ideas behind what I'm trying to communicate, not just the actual process in real life. Um, so as far as kind of where I started, I started kind of like wanting to show off this like really pure kind of raw block of aluminum, which the camera is manufactured from. So there's a whole bunch of shots that were kind of unnecessary to like just show off the aluminum itself. Then show like a kind of like a CNC machine lathe come down and sort of begin the process of milling away the material to reveal the body of the camera. I kept a lot of that in there because I think like that's just a really like visually interesting process to watch, and it's also kind of a challenge to execute. So I'm excited to work out how to animate that stuff really well. Um, so yeah, you see kind of like the camera housing being born from this block of raw material. It goes through kind of like a sandblasting process where there's these little tiny beads of glass that bounce off the surface, and they go from it being like super raw and unpolished to being like a really nice even finish.
Yeah.
Which is like what a lot of Apple products. That's how they get that really like perfect finish on the metal. And then it goes into kind of like a bath where it's being anodized. And then you kind of see once the housing is finished and emerges from that bath, you kind of see all the components, all the electronics come together. Kind of tells the story of how it was designed to be extremely compact, and how all of those really intricate parts fit together perfectly to fit on the inside. Um, then the lens comes in, the camera kind of comes together.
It's like pieces
Uh,
of a body too, like how the lens reacts
yeah,
like an eye and all these different
exactly.
things too, and the body connects to the eye that gets the soul and the purpose, which is the UI stuff too. So
Right. Like, so when those two things are united is when it kind of comes to life, right?
yeah,
Because it's complete. And then there were some shots kind of showing off the UI because there were different aspects of the UI that I wanted to hint at. I didn't want to like take the time to really explain any of it. It's more just showing you little like tidbits of, oh, that looks different. That's not like a digital camera that I've seen before, and make you curious to learn more about, how it works. So that was kind of like my first pass at the storyboard, and you'll
these are
notice like
great
it's
storyboards by the way too. My
thank you.
storyboards, like, let me see, I have them. My sketchbook. Like, you're so professional through the whole process too. So, but like for the class, I don't expect people to be too crazy about it. But you did a great job of it. I'll try to see if I can find the epoch stuff, because then from here you took my advice to break things down graphically too. So yeah, here's like my version of storyboards, which I don't really care about. Like it's on the webcam if you guys can see. It's kind of small anyways, but yeah, the key to doing these things is it's cheap to get your ideas out quickly, and it's easy to get the ideas out so that like you can quickly have like the reaction that you need and the memory, and it's cheap to work fast, so you can just kind of go get your ideas out as fast as possible, because a lot of times I used to think like these things need to be precious, and if you're sharing them with like a client, then sure, but for the most part, like these what you have in your storyboards are great. I wouldn't go beyond this, like because it
Yeah,
has all the right information, the framing. You actually have light information now, the shadow and stuff, which is really cool too. But that's part of the class too, is like getting your ideas out from concept of ideas of words, and then out into actual like frames of thought based on like sketches and thumbnails, quick iterations. And then the second part of this, going further on down the road, is this exercise, which we take the basic core black and white principles and then make frames from there. And what you can do here is you can quickly see how well your composition works, and it really helps you understand like what you're trying to say and what you're trying to do. And these are beautiful and perfect examples of how framing and composition will work, and testing things quickly, because of course having the final render with all the real photoreal stuff is great, but unless you put the time into understanding the light and the composition and the structure of your shot, it'll just be like everything else. And I can't count how many times I've seen really beautiful, amazing 3D work that hasn't had the thought behind the composition and light direction and photo lens and all that kind of stuff, like putting it together properly and presenting it properly. It's almost like they did 99% of the work and then they forgot that last 1%. But the difference between really great work and good work is that 1%, which comes from the foundation. It comes from the idea, it comes from the sketch, it comes from these iterations, in my opinion. And that's why I had Tim run through the motions, or Tim did it himself, but I suggested that you did this because I think it was going to help you in the future too. And it's quick to do them too. Like you can design these. Did you use After Effects? Or no, you probably used Adobe
This is
Illustrator,
just
right?
Illustrator, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Super fast.
Yeah. And what's cool about Tim too is he knows many different programs and he's pretty prolific. What's the word I'm looking for? You're really great at understanding these programs and being able to navigate different ones too. So, which really helps too, is like having a good understanding of what program to use when and where and stuff. And I mean, this stuff doesn't take long, right, to make these?
I mean, no, this is like the fastest part of the entire process is just mocking these up really quickly. So
Yeah. Did
it
you
was just
feel
a
it
fun
helped you?
exercise. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it gave me like a target to hit later on for just like the composition of the shots, and then trying to push the lighting. Obviously, like the lighting, it's a lot more complicated in once you actually get into it than just like these simple black and white stills. And I definitely ran into issues trying to like capture or like trying to translate the thought that I had at this phase into the actual 3D. So it was interesting to try and solve the challenge of like figuring out how to recreate that idea that you had initially.
Yeah.
Um,
Because they're obviously going to be different. So,
yeah, but it's super helpful, absolutely.
yeah. Awesome. Yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
so yeah, so I had basically gone through that whole storyboarding process, and it was all kind of like I was just thinking about everything at like face value, basically. Like, here's the camera, here's how it's manufactured, here's how the components come together. But like at the core of it, there were a bunch of ideas that I really wanted to capture that weren't really being they just weren't being communicated very clearly through that process.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that Ash really pushed me to do was to try and explore things a little bit more abstractly. So I started out with some like really simple explorations of like one of the things that the camera is the design is really emphasizing is like the use of extremely simple shapes. It's like the camera body itself is just essentially like a rectangular box, right? And then the lens is just a pure cylinder if you simplify it down. So I wanted to try and see if like maybe there was a way that I could use those shapes like in their simplified form to kind of talk about the motivation behind the design and like showcase kind of the geometry that was involved in everything, and how like carefully considered it was. So I was doing some just like really quick tests to see like maybe this is like a visual metaphor that I could use to help communicate that as like kind of like a graphic design element.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I ended up not using these, but it was like a fun
They're
little
beautiful.
exploration that didn't take very much time.
Exactly. And sometimes it's good to deviate slightly to chase those things. And the whole time, I think what I saw from you, Tim, is that you had all the skills and the abilities to make these photoreal things that are actually applicable and great. So I was like, okay, let's try and see what you do when you get abstract or metaphoric, and thinking about things beyond just like a pretty picture. Why a pretty picture, and how can we take shapes and languages of shapes and create something poetic, almost like a haiku, visual haiku. So rather
Yeah.
than a photo of something, what about the foundation of what makes that thing unique and special? I think That's really the key. I think that's the key of what we're after, in this thing. So
Yeah, so this, this was like my first stab at that, which I don't know if it was that successful. Then I was just doing some other like lighting tests and stuff during that phase, but
I think it's good that you did
um,
that though too. Sorry, I didn't mean to go back, but I think it's really good that you did that in the process because it wasn't like taxing heavy wise, and it gave your brain some more food to chew on moving forward. So like I strongly suggest sometimes if you need to deviate slightly, just be cautious of your time, but sometimes you need to deviate just to kind of go to tell you that you're on the right track. Sometimes you need to know that you're on the right track by what not to do. So
yep.
as long as you
Yeah,
have the
this
vision to go forward,
this
so
yeah, this process was a lot of that. Figuring out what to do and what not to do. So then getting into like the fun stuff. One of the things that I started to explore after that was, maybe there's something that can be communicated through symbolism, and instead of just showing the manufacturing process, true to life, also kind of incorporate some more like abstract symbolic ways of communicating, like, the process of turning this like raw material, like this chunk of metal, into this perfect, like pristine, like designed object.
yeah,
So I started like looking at, how can I, like maybe I can make this like kind of raw chunk of metal, and have that be kind of like an element that's like a metaphor that follows you through the entire piece, basically. So at the beginning, it starts off as this, raw chunk, but then you kind of see it transform as the camera is transforming as well, to kind of help sort of convey the idea of what's happening behind the scenes. Um, so this was actually something that I made like a process in Houdini, to generate this nugget, basically,
awesome. Are you gonna
using kind
share
of like,
share some of that stuff today too, or
yeah,
just some pieces?
definitely.
Awesome, cool.
Definitely. So this was just like basically layering a bunch of noise functions together in different ways to generate kind of like, an object that was that felt very natural, I guess. And had like different scales of detail as well. So it's not just like, one level of noise. It's got, different levels at different scales that give you kind of fine detail as well as like really large protrusions and stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Uh, and then these are obviously rendered in octanes. So I did all the, material creation and then lighting
Why
and
not
everything in
V-Ray? Why not
octane.
V-Ray?
I'm
Okay.
using V-Ray right now actually for some stuff for work, but
Well,
uh,
people are already asking us like what kind of um, render you're using and stuff too. So, and then people are like, "Geez, so many programs." So yeah, I prefaced that earlier as Tim is quite well. I don't know what the word. I guess people are saying. I don't know. You're very well versed with many different programs, and you're
but the important thing to note is that like I know how to use like the basics of most, like a lot of different
jack of
programs,
all
but I'm not
trades.
like a master of any of them except
Sure.
like maybe some of the CAD stuff that I use all the time.
I think you
But
shredded at PureRef, which is what you're using now. You're
I'm
pro at
pretty
it.
pretty good at PureRef, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I like to hop in and out of different things, and try and find like especially like with Houdini, for example, like I go in there with like a particular idea in mind of like what I want to get out of it, but I don't know how to do like probably 90% of the stuff that Houdini actually can do. So I find the way to use it in a way that works for me,
Yeah.
and then leave the rest of it for people that want to do other stuff like simulate fire and things like that.
Which is
Although that would
what's
be pretty awesome.
yeah, people do a lot of crazy stuff with that in there. But the thing I want to take a moment to also remind people is like you don't necessarily have to just know all these programs to get anything done, but it does help, and I want it to be reminded that Tim knows just the right amount to help him further. Like there's a million different ways to make this rock. I think like you could even
Oh
photo
yeah,
bash it if you wanted, but then
yeah,
you
yeah,
wouldn't. It would be a photo bash, but you can make it in ZBrush. You could
absolutely.
sculpt it. The cool thing about, I think, what you're going to talk about with Houdini, and the reason why I use Houdini is because it's procedural, and you could augment it on the fly, and you can add things and change things and shift things on the fly, and you can basically make infinite amounts of different types of rocks. Then you take all that into Octane, and then you can, did you use displacement on it as well to kind of create
Yep.
more surface detail? So there you go.
Yep.
So then infinite from Houdini, infinite from Octane, basically. So yeah,
Yeah, it's just super flexible. I'm really bad at ZBrush, so I wouldn't use it anyway just because I I need to get better at it. But
it's such a
for me,
pain in the
like,
butt.
yeah, for me it would have been like, I don't know, I'm sure I could have like created this rock in ZBrush if I tried, but it would be only one, one iteration, whereas in Houdini, like I can press a couple buttons and get basically an infinite number of different, variations on this, to find the one that I really like.
So
So
boss. Yeah, it's beautiful. And also, I think what sells it really well is your presentation. So like the soft gray background to push the lights, and then cutting the rock in half through two different materials, and then just the presentation, I think is what's really important to remember as well. It's like your presentation's on point, your slides are on point, the way you're putting things together, you're thinking as a photographer would, which I think is really important to constantly. I see that a lot in other people's work and myself, that as I grow and develop, it's like it's all about setting things up that are presentable and pleasing to the eye if you're making visuals. So yeah.
for sure. I also messed around with trying to like. This was actually, it was funny. This started off as like actually not part of the project at all, and I kind of thought this might actually be relevant, but I was trying to like mimic kind of like how a prism, splits light into different wavelengths, different colors. And I thought, maybe this would be like a way that I could kind of metaphorically speak to, the way that a camera lens functions, even though in reality, like it's completely different. It's not splitting light, it's bending it into a, different shape. But these were just some like quick little tests that I did in Octane to see if I could make a prism and see if that was something that I wanted to pursue, which I ultimately decided that it wasn't, but it
Yeah.
was still fun nonetheless.
It's awesome. Yeah, I was really pushing for this. I remember like, yeah, do this. Prisms,
Well,
light.
yeah, like
And we
the
even
stuff that
consulted Rafael Rao.
yeah, the stuff that he showed me blew my mind
Yeah.
because like he proved to me that there are rendering engines out there that can actually like make a prism and like have it actually split light
Create
and
the
bounce it around
causticks
the
and all that
scene.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, in a realistic way, which I would not have guessed that that was even possible, but it is.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had Rafael Rao on the podcast, and not the podcast, on the stream before, and you guys are familiar with him. Silverwing, if you're not, he's incredible, awesome. He's like one of those guys that I go like, I don't know how to do this, but he probably does, and so he's definitely,
Yeah, he's a real master.
he's a sweetheart. He's the nicest guy too. So, but yeah, you didn't end up pursuing this because then you went off there. So, and keep in mind, guys, this is so the class is 8 weeks, and with Tim, because of his busy schedule and how intense this was, it seemed to be like half of it. So we were kind of on track with every week we were meeting up, and then towards the end, because of his demanding schedule from work, we started doing like double weeks and stuff. He had to leave and travel and stuff. So keep in mind that this was a duration of, I would say, like 12 weeks, maybe 12 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something like
about
that.
12 weeks. Okay. So I just want you guys to be familiar with that too, as well. So it's a lot of time. It's a lot of part-time, side time things. And you're like building your custom computer and stuff at the time as well too. So yeah, lots of fun.
Yep, that happened in the middle of the project as well. Um, so here's just some more test shots that I was doing. Some of them showing off like the aluminum block in its pure form, but then also some that were showing kind of like the transformation process. So I was playing around with the idea of like maybe you see like the aluminum block like go from being like super rough to transform and be super smooth, kind of like the process of refining it. Um,
Landscape.
yeah, not realistic, but kind of a cool like visual metaphor. There's some more stuff with the nuggets.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's what I'm talking about. So
Banana
this
bread.
was yeah, this was also Houdini. So like the stuff on the right side here is basically like a noise function, which you can probably tell, but then there's like an attribute basically that fades from one side to the other that you can animate. So you can basically like control the strength of the noise. I mean, I guess in Cinema 4D this would be like a fall off.
Polyfx. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be like a fall off. So you could set like your like shader deformer, I guess, or displacer on one side and then have it fall off to the other. But you can do that in Houdini as well. And then I was also playing around with this like weird kind of like sphere kind of being revealed from the center of the nugget, like chopped cleanly in half.
I love
So
that.
yeah, this is kind of like super abstract, but pretty cool.
It's when you really use 3D to its ability, you know? It's like, because you're creating things that are really difficult to make in reality. That's when I think that's the key, you know?
For sure. And in Houdini, like that's all like super easy.
Yeah. Damn you,
Oh, there's some
Houdini.
more
People
shots.
are asking for some Houdini love. We'll get to it, guys, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
I want to show some stuff for sure.
Yeah. And there's some questions coming in too. So when you start to get that stuff going, I'll take a break for some questions and stuff. One of the questions came in we could probably do now while you're showing these renders and stuff is,
Yep.
hey Ash, could you ask him his render and why he chose it? So there you go.
Okay. I've been thinking. I think about this all the time right now because I'm trying to convince my company to get a workstation for Octane. But yeah, so I have basically used like two rendering engines over the course of my career so far, which is not very long. But I started out using V-Ray to do product design rendering. And V-Ray at the time, it's starting to evolve now, but at the time it was purely a CPU-based renderer. We use a version that's actually based in Rhino, which is pretty limited. It's like super old, and they don't update it very often. They just came out with like a new version of it, but for a long time it was kind of like behind the curve of like all the other versions of V-Ray because it didn't have like node-based materials. It didn't have a lot of the like map types and things that you can find in like the 3ds Max version of V-Ray. So it's kind of frustrating, and we have like a render farm basically at my company that's set up to do CPU rendering. So, you know, we've kind of like optimized our workflow for that piece of software. But you know, the thing I don't really like about it, and they're starting to improve it now, but at the time, the thing that really frustrated me about it was that you couldn't really get like a really like nice real-time preview of whatever it is that you're working on. So it's just so time consuming to like hop back and forth between like, you know, making changes in the material editor or adjusting your lights and then do a test render. And then when your test render doesn't come out the way you want it to, you have to go back and make more changes, then do another render and just like keep going back and forth and back and forth. And it's just really, really time consuming, especially if you're like doing, you know, some pretty complicated stuff. So the thing that I wanted to get away from is like having to do that kind of time wasting process back and forth over and over again. So, I mean, like now V-Ray has like a better real time mode. I think I haven't really had an opportunity to try it yet, but I'm hoping that I can in the future. But I switched over to Octane because when I was taking Ash's UI and data design class on Learn Squared, he was starting to show off how he was using Octane, and I think Mache was using Octane as well. And I started to see like the real benefit of being able to you know, basically see what you're working on in real time, which is something that like in product design, Keyshot is super popular.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons it's popular is for that reason. You know, it has a really great real-time preview. And but the thing about Keyshot, it's also very limited, especially if you want to do like really, you know, high fidelity animation or like really photorealistic stuff.
Yeah.
So I chose the very non-traditional route for a product designer of trying to learn Octane and figure out how to apply Octane to, you know, doing industrial design rendering, which is something that I've seen a few people do, but it's still like not a common tool for our industry at all. And so far, like I love it, and it's been really awesome. I think it's sped up my workflow a lot in terms of just like figuring out how to get the look that I'm going for, and you know, building materials, testing out lights. It's able to hit like the level of quality that I want, which sometimes I struggle with in Keyshot. So to me, it's like the best of both worlds, and it also is, you know, in Cinema 4D. So you've got your animation tool set that's really powerful. You've got everything else that, you know, Cinema 4D offers. You have the ability to link Houdini to Cinema 4D, so you can bring your Houdini processes in.
Yeah.
and animate them, and it just has
Endless.
it's got
Oh,
all
it's
the stuff.
awesome. Yeah, it's really great. I mean, it has moments and points, and a lot of people that are having problems with it seem to be going to Redshift. But I have,
Yeah, that's true.
I've
Redshift is
been,
also pretty good.
yeah, I hear it's really fast. Just a question for me: how do you manage knowing where to go and how to invest your time, and how much of your time is spent on learning about it, and do you like read the manuals or go through the forums, or and then how much of it is you just going in with the knowledge that you already kind of have and testing things? What's the ratio usually?
Mostly, like I don't know. I only go like do tutorials and things. I mean, obviously at the beginning when I was first learning it, I did a bunch of tutorials because like I just needed to learn how to do, the things that I was used to doing in V-Ray. Um, but now like I don't really. I kind of only do that when I run into a big issue where I can't figure out how to do something. Like I was looking at tutorials for like Octane scatter, for example, which is a thing you can use to, distribute like objects across a surface, basically like grass or sand grains and stuff like that. That's something kind of specific to Octane that I didn't really know how to use, so I looked up how to do that, and it's super powerful.
Yeah.
But I think like the thing that helped me a lot is that like because I had a pretty good knowledge of V-Ray going into learning Octane, the differences are, I mean, Octane is like actually a much simpler renderer to use than V-Ray. It has way fewer settings, um, and I would say like the material creation is very similar. Or at least actually it's simpler also, but also like there's very clear, uh, you know, ties from one to the other. So like if you know how to build materials in V-Ray, like you can figure out Octane pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So the learning curve was pretty shallow for me as well, just because of the knowledge that I had going into it. Um, so that helped a lot too. I'm pretty lucky with that.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear that's how you're kind of learning it too, because a lot of the people that are probably watching this and wondering like, how is it that you're able to reach these caliber is a lot of it. I think is just your approach to learning things, and then your approach to the time that you spend learning the things, and then how to use that applicable knowledge and kind of problem solve as you go. And like you mentioned, like, and you're being kind and humble about it, but you're like, I'm not a pro at all these things, but you obviously know how to get to the result. And for me, it's like I'll use like Raoul Marx, for example. Like he will always joke with me too, like, oh, I'm not a legitimate or traditional like proper VisFX artist, but like
But
you
he
look
gets
at
the
his
job
work,
done.
yeah. And I don't care if he thinks he does a proper UV or whatever. Like he understands how to do it, but it doesn't. It's more or less like getting that thing out there, and I think that's the key too, because I know a lot of really high level, great, prolific, very smart professionals that understand these things, but they don't have a creative cell in their body. They do, they just don't know how to activate it because they've been so logical and analytical and everything. So yeah,
Yep.
cool. Let's move on to this next section.
Yeah, we don't have
We're
to spend a whole lot of time on this one, but
yeah,
basically, from like the results of all that exploration, I went back and did another series of just super quick. I think I used Photoshop for these, but just super quick like Photoshop stills that were incorporating all of the ideas that I had generated. So, incorporating the idea of representing these sort of transformations abstractly, and kind of like switching in between showing you like the literal world of what's happening to the camera and then showing you this abstract world that is also like happening at the same time and is like basically a symbolic representation of what's happening in the real world. So it kind of shows the transformation process of going from this super raw piece of aluminum to the super refined machined housing, kind of the transformation that the housing undergoes, um, all the parts coming together, and then there's some abstract kind of representations of the interactions that are happening in the UI as well.
yeah,
So it's kind of like giving you two different versions of everything, so that you have like the core idea behind it, and then also like the literal kind of representation as well. And they're also kind of like so these are like the final style frames that I made for the mentorship, but you can see that there's like deliberate kind of use of contrast so that the things that are happening in real life are very dark, and then you switch to this super light world, which is kind of the abstract realm. Um, so like there's a very clear visual distinction when you're watching it of like whether or not, I'm in one world or the other. So it's not super confusing.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the goal. I think I've got some work to do yet before it's all figured out, but it's definitely getting there.
Yeah, man. Because if you think about it, everything that's here that you're seeing is completely made. So that's the beauty of it, you know. And there's like, I think the key that we were trying to get to when you're making the style frames is like trying to solidify things down. You know, like the people that I learned this kind of stuff from, because I learned mostly design like a little bit through school, but mostly through the act of doing. And I had teachers like Kyle Cooper, Danny Yacht, and all my other coworkers at Prolog at the time, and the lessons that I learned from them were just so like they're priceless lessons. You know, lessons that you learn in the field are, and if your mind's ready. So like a lot of it was trying to get you to see the abstract, you know, and getting you to pull that abstract and then merge those two things and stuff. And so these are the final images that you made for the style frames of the class, and I think they're really quite striking. You had some really great approaches, and if you look at the adaptation or the evolution of the project from the beginning, because the beginning was very literal. It was like, this is beautiful renders of a beautiful thing that you spend a lot of time and work on, and it was very precious to you because you had spent so much time on it. But
Right.
I don't blame you. I would too. You know, like I spent so much time, but the thing is, like, I think what you've done and evolved the idea, it really helped make for the project to be a lot stronger, and I think it made a lot. Yeah, I just think I think it evolved the experience and the whole thing totally. You know, so
Yeah, basically, like, going through the class kind of taught me a different way of looking at things, or just a different way of approaching, projects, because I think, like, coming from my background in industrial design, like, we're all about, like, making it real as fast as possible, like, being super literal, taking, like, electronics and, like, engineering constraints and things and designing around those. And we don't necessarily spend a lot of time thinking in the abstract and thinking, like, what's the, like, we don't really think, like, about symbolism or, like, narrative storytelling that much. At least I don't in my process very much. So
yeah,
just because usually there's just not enough time for it. Like, you're in a hurry just to get to the end result and, create different design concepts that sometimes I think that part of the process gets a little bit lost sometimes. And sometimes it's not really, like, I don't know, you could debate about whether or not it's even really necessary in industrial design to think about, like, things that way. But for me, it was really helpful just to, understand, like, what's the deeper meaning behind the ideas that I'm trying to convey here, and, what's the most effective way that I can do that using visuals. So I think it really, this process kind of opened my mind up to, just different ways of thinking, and, hopefully is going to make me a better designer as a result.
yeah. I know for sure it will, because it's just going to be awesome. So, and you're just, you know, as you go, you're learning and developing and adapting, which is great too. And when you're done with this, eventually, it's gonna be great.
Eventually.
Yeah, and when you're done with it,
It's going to happen.
it'll be like, you know, I was thinking to myself, like, how, you know, if you were to go out to the real world and say, like, hey, like, studio blah, make this thing, like, I'm thinking about how long it would take them to make it, and how it's just you doing it. You know, I think it's a sign of the change of the season. You know, it's like a one-man band. Just the power that we have individually is just incredible. It's so awesome, and it's just awe-inspiring. You know, it does take a long time. You've been working on this for a long time. Somebody asked, what part of it did you make using Blender, and did you use plugins?
I used Blender for a very small amount of stuff. Basically, all of the little, like, components on the circuit boards were done in Blender for the most part. Just because it was, like, I don't know, in SolidWorks, like, it's time consuming to do anything that's, like, rounded and, like, soft.
Yeah.
So you've got all these little, like, solders and things that have to be kind of organic. So For me, it was just fastest to like model those things using subdivision, polygon modeling in Blender really quickly. So I basically just created like one version of each component that I needed. And then in Cinema 4D, I went through and populated them, using instancing across the board so that they render really quickly because, or they don't take up a lot of memory because they're all just render instances.
Yeah,
There's like one real one, and then the rest are just duplicates of it.
that's great.
And then, yeah, so that was just the fastest way for me to
Smart.
get to the result that I wanted.
Yeah.
And I think like Blender for me is just like it's sort of like a legacy like tool for me because I learned it when I was in high school,
Mm.
and I don't use it for very many things professionally anymore. It's just kind of like something I have in my back pocket when I need to like polymodel something really quickly. I can just like whip it out and do that without a whole lot of difficulty. Although like I'm not very good at it. It's like, one of those things where I know just enough to like get the result that I want.
Yeah.
If I had to model like an entire like, super detailed object in Blender, I would really struggle because I'm just not that good at polygon modeling. So I know just enough to like be able to do like the simple little things that I needed to do for this project and get
Yeah.
on with the rest of it. So
No, that's awesome. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's that's a good point too, to think about like the tools and just getting in there to use just the right amounts, and also because every program has a different skill set that works better for it. Like somebody was just asking like, "Hey Tim, what do you think about modeling Houdini?" This is per example. Do you think it's more powerful than other software? And I think that's such a interesting question because it's a loaded question because there's so many different things. I'll let you answer it obviously, but there's so many factors to put in the equation, and there's
yeah, like
no one that's better than any. It's just like they all do
yeah,
different things.
I definitely agree with that. I don't know Houdini well enough to really make like an educated, have like a super strong opinion about it, I guess, because like for me it's like an amazing like generative design tool. I think it's the best thing out there for doing like, generative design or procedural design. But I don't know if I would go to it to do like most other types of modeling, but I know people do. So, and I think like with their latest update for Houdini, I think 16, like modeling tools was one of their big focuses, improving them. So
Mm.
I think they really want Houdini to be like an all-in-one sort of like suite where you can go do your modeling, do your texturing, do your lighting, do your rendering, do your visual effects. Like it can kind of do everything. I don't know if it's necessarily the best at all of those things, but it's definitely capable. So it's kind of just it comes down to personal preference and like what you like to do and the types of things you want to model and whether you need things to be able to be edited later and like go back and create a whole bunch of different variations really quickly versus having to go back and like start over from scratch and modify things. Yeah, so I don't have like a strong opinion one way or the other. I just think it's interesting and it's cool that they're focusing on making those modeling tools better.
Yeah, it's awesome. We have so many amazing skills, our tools at our fingertips, and then education and all that stuff set up, and resources like these live streams and stuff. Somebody was talking about in the chat that it would be really great to have Learn Squared, the Twitch stream, as a community where people could stream as well, and great opportunity to shed light on other unknown artists. Yeah, we totally want to do that. We want to create the stream so that it's constantly moving. So it's not just Mache and I. We're working on getting other instructors on here to run their own streams throughout the week. So you guys have like just tons of content. And you're getting more familiar with all of us, and you're seeing what we're doing and what we're up to. So, and not only us, but it would be really great if you're really interested in being a part of that. Please just email Momo at Learn Squared, because Momo will be helping a lot with that. Momo kind of runs the behind the scenes of the stream, and he's awesome. So let me send you guys the email for Momo so you guys can get at him, because I think that would be awesome. His name is actually Mohammed, but Momo, we call him Momo at the
Momo Gids.
Momo Goods. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, hit him up. And yeah, if you guys are interested or you have ideas, or you guys like, oh, I'm usually I have Sundays off and I can stream for an hour or something. As long as you're not a jerk, like we'll let you do it. So yeah, and
Yeah,
we're
actually, that's
on.
something I wanted to do more of too.
Yeah, you should. I mean, if you're just like doing something or you learn something cool and you want to share it with people, it's just like the perfect place to do it. So it's like, hey, I'm here and I'll be here for like an hour and share some stuff and then pass it along. And it's like for people, they can just watch it at any time they want. And I often watch streams again. Like the other day, Beeple was doing something. I was like, oh, how did he do that? I went back to the stream and watched it again. I was like, oh, okay, great. And it helped me out with the project I was working on too. So these are great. We have to move along though.
Yeah.
I have to get off at 2:15, so we have 25 minutes. But if
Okay.
you want to just finish up what you were going to say on this, I don't want to rush you, but I just want to.
No, I kind of think I've said everything that I wanted to say about the style frames. So maybe it would be a good time to do a little demo of some sort. I know people are really interested to see like how I'm using Houdini for this stuff. So maybe that would be a good thing to talk about.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Some
Um,
wires. So here we
so
are,
I have like
Houdini. There we go.
Yeah, so I used Houdini for like quite a few different shots. This is like a procedural way to generate the water droplets on the surface of the camera and have them so that they don't intersect with the surface, so they're like just floating on the top of it, and they like flow around it in a natural way and cling to it.
And surface
Um,
tension and stuff.
yeah, I guess they don't really have like I didn't really build in like real surface tension or anything. This was just like a really really quick and dirty like uh, tool that I made that doesn't have a lot of sophistication built into it yet, but it worked for what I needed it for at the time. And basically, the way that works is I just brought in my camera model, which is just like a polygon model that I exported from SolidWorks, or actually exported from Rhino, because SolidWorks doesn't have a great polygon exporter. Um, and then basically I created an attribute. So Houdini is like all about attributes, and attributes are basically just a way for you to store information on the geometry itself. So you can have like an infinite number of different attributes that are basically just keeping information for different parts of your process. So in this case, like this red gradient that you can see is just basically a tool that I'm using to define like where those water droplets are going to go. And so this can correspond to like the level of the water. So like if I was going to animate this, I would tie that attribute to, basically where the water level is. And then it would update automatically as the camera kind of rises out of the water. So you could basically have it generate your droplets on the camera as it's pulled out of the water, which would be really cool. But in this case, it's all still, so I'm not doing anything that crazy. But I'm using that attribute to specify like where these little points are getting distributed.
So it randomizes on the surface.
Exactly. So these are completely random. You can control the density of them, and or you can control basically the number just by adjusting this number here. And that way I can like say, hey, if I want more water droplets, I just turn the number up and I've got more water droplets. And then what's happening is I'm offsetting them a little bit so that it's hard to see, but there's like a little shift that happens here. I'm like moving the points a little bit away from the original surface so that the water droplets that they create are, instead of being like perfect spheres, they're kind of like, shallow domes basically, because I wanted them to be shaped more realistically, because I don't think water droplets are generally like perfectly spherical.
Yeah.
And you can see like when I create this step, it just makes a bunch of balls. So I basically am like chopping off the majority of the sphere and leaving just a little part on the top that's dome shaped. So these get smoothed, and this is called a VDB, which is basically a volume.
Yeah.
So these, if you zoom into them, they're actually not really like geometry. They're not like traditional,
like
polygon
code.
geometry. It's just little, little three-dimensional pixels basically. They're just floating in space. And the cool thing about that is they're super easy to like blend together smoothly. And you can add and subtract.
They're voxels, right?
Yeah, exactly. Voxels.
Yeah.
And you can add and subtract them super easily too, because they don't have polygons, so they don't have to calculate like how those, intersections happen. Because like booleans with polygons gets really messy and
Yeah.
creates all kinds of problems pretty often. So this is super clean, and you can see I'm basically upresing them so they have more detail.
So that's like a
And
subdivision
then
node.
yep, and then smoothing them out a little bit, so now they look much more refined.
The trippy
Um,
interface, the node-based interface.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's
It takes
cool.
some getting used to, but and then the other thing I'm doing is creating a similar voxel from my camera body,
Hmm.
so that I can subtract this from the water drops using this node here. So now you
That's
can see
cool.
that like I have basically water drops that are conforming to the surface,
Hmm.
and there's nothing on the inside of the body where the water wouldn't be able to get to.
Yeah, so
Uh,
like booleans basically.
yep, so it's just like a volume Boolean operation.
It's cool.
And then you can convert that into polygons again.
Ah,
I probably should have like smoothed it some more before I did that. You can see like the edges are kind of jagged, but
yeah.
at the scale that I was rendering it, you don't see it that much. So yeah, now this
I
is like a
noticed it,
polygon
man.
object.
How dare you?
What's that?
I'm just joking.
Oh,
I said I noticed it. I'm just totally joking.
yeah, you probably did.
Oh, damn it. I've had enough of you. Yeah, that looks great.
And then you can see I'm just merging them back together and fixing the normals.
Yeah. Hmm.
So
Oh,
the cool
that's
thing
cool.
about that is like your water droplets, they refract properly because they have a fully enclosed shape
Yeah.
that clings to the surface.
With
So you
some
don't have to
surface
worry
tension.
about, yeah, you don't have to worry about like the water not looking realistic because of the volume not being, properly closed or intersecting the surface or whatever.
Yeah.
So
That's cool. Don't you love that CAD based when you make a circle and like if you close in really close on the topology of the
oh
case you made?
gosh, yeah, it's really bad.
Like even small circles that don't have anything, they're like a trillion polygons in
Let's
one
just
little
put
thing.
all the triangles. The
Yeah.
worst is like the radii too.
Oh
Like
man, it's
you can see there's
heavy.
like weird gaps and
Yeah.
stuff, and like it just doesn't understand how to like properly, you
That's
know,
the thing we need.
mesh those things.
I have lunch with Curtis tomorrow, um, who I know you made this in SolidWorks, but you are
I use
using
Fusion now
Fusion.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You've been using it because you're designing a class that's using it. So I'm going to talk with him tomorrow and see if like how the progress is going with the exporter to 3D. Because I mean, man, once they can figure out how to get a really good exporter, that's going to be a game changer. Because I use Moy still to
Yeah, and I use
export.
Rhino.
Okay, yeah, and I think Rhino and Moy have the similar thing because I
Yeah.
think they're similar in that respect. So, yeah,
Yeah, like if Fusion had like the best like CAD to mesh exporter of all of like the CAD programs out there right now,
yeah,
so many people would use it because that's a real problem
it
that
is.
especially like I mean it's not a problem for industrial design because
No,
we never deal in meshes.
yeah,
We're just going straight, we're using CAD as like the final output
yeah,
that we hand off to our clients. But yeah, if you're trying to do anything like in the world of animation or like visual effects or concept art, like you really have to be able to create meshes, and there's like no good solution for that right now.
or maybe the mesh programs can do something that reads the files properly or something like it allows it.
Yeah,
It like treats it almost like a VBR or whatever, or something like that, or a
yeah,
DB
one
or
way or the
something.
other.
Yeah,
Um,
it'd be interesting.
Something needs to happen though.
We need change, people. We need change. No, that's great. So this is one of the files.
So that's one file.
Okay.
Here's another one. Um, this one's kind of heavy, but basically, like what I was doing with this one is trying to like generatively create ripples around the camera
Mm.
for the water surface, and also
Cool.
create surface tension as it's kind of like rising out. So this is pretty similar actually to the way that I did it.
How did you learn Houdini? What was the? Is it just online tutorials and messing around with it, or what was the
Yeah.
approach?
So I have been in love with this site called Entagma. That's entagma.com. Or maybe it's .net. I can't remember, but it's a couple of guys. I can't remember which motion design studio they're from, but I think they both work at really like awesome studio that does a lot of this stuff, and they both created Intagma as just like an online resource for designers
Yeah, it's an
to
awesome
learn
resource.
Houdini.
Yeah.
And their tutorials are like super, super polished, like really well illustrated. Like they explain the concepts using like really clear little, graphics and stuff that they create before they dive into actually building it.
Yeah.
So
And it's
I've
really
like,
cool things that they make too. It's not just like some
yeah,
like bunk ass thing, you know. It's
now
like,
they're like really beautiful too.
yeah.
So I've like marathoned basically all of their tutorials
Okay.
over the period of a couple, I don't know, a couple weeks or a couple months, and now I just do them whenever they come out. But um, yeah, like that's probably the number one resource I think for learning how to do like nice design stuff in Houdini. There's obviously tons of resources out there if you want to learn visual effects in Houdini, which I need to start doing a little bit of, but I think because Houdini is generally seen as like a visual effects software package, there's way more information on the internet about those types of things than there are about like doing generative design and stuff like that. So that's why I love Entagma so much, is because they're pretty
Oddballs.
much just focused on design and like how to create, beautiful objects and things from Houdini.
Yeah.
Whereas everyone else is just like, here's how to simulate smoke, here's how to do liquid, which is really valuable, but
Yes.
you need both. I think.
I think it's really good to go into a program and try to do something a little bit different than it normally is. That's where you're going to find some oddities that will kind of make you stand out from the crowd as well too. So if you're looking to like for example like Moi 3D for example, or like Fusion 360, like how Mache was using it for building concepts for Ghost in the Shell and stuff like that, like how unique and different and interesting that is. I think there's a good key there, so yeah, and trying different things, using CAD based softwares to make hard surface guns that then get 3D printed for film sets and stuff. So
Right,
yeah,
it's awesome. It's
yeah,
awesome how like I think
hybrid.
at this point like people are starting to realize that like there's no like one way that you have to do things, and starting to experiment more with different combinations of software that maybe haven't been done traditionally in the past.
Yeah.
So what's happening here is I'm basically taking the body of the camera and sort of creating an attribute that spreads outwards from it. So you can see that like the ripples follow the shape of the camera if you were to like blow them out
Yeah.
or offset them, I guess.
It's cool.
So I have like basically a process that's taking the shape of the camera, spreading it out on an attribute, and then there's actually a really cool thing where you can basically like draw these ripples.
Hmm.
So
Like
like
a spline or something.
exactly. So I have this spline over here,
Hmm. That's cool.
and this is what's creating the ripples. So like I can, it's slow because it's just like a super
Heavy mesh.
heavy mesh, but
Hmm.
like you can just like drag these things out, and it has an impact on the way that those ripples are formed. It's probably hard to see,
Yeah,
but it's very
I can
subtle.
see it subtly. Yeah, that's so cool. Hmm. But when you make it off of that geometry, do you have to make it based on this bell curve here, or you draw it out? Oh, there it is. I can see it.
Yeah,
Huh.
you can see that moving.
Yeah, that's so cool. Huh.
So this would not work for like something animated. This is mostly just for like the purpose of creating a still, but it's mostly just something I wanted to play with for fun because kind of just to see if I could.
Most people like ride a bike or I don't know, watch TV for fun. Here you are figuring out these weird ass things. And there's all those details too, thinking about it, like how the surface tension of something looks if it were to be dunked in there or emerging from the surface, and how it sends off those ripples, and really thinking about those things, and all those details I think are really important to really consider and conceive of as you're going through it, which I think is good too. So somebody's asking, is Houdini indie? Yeah, you can get an indie license, I think.
Not only that, you can get the indie license it costs a small amount. But if you want it for free, you can get the Houdini Apprentice version, which
Yeah,
is completely free and perpetual, so you can use it forever, as long as you're doing non-commercial work. So
there you
it's
go.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, so like I think that was something that Adam Swab, because he taught a class on Houdini, and he's teaching another one right now. But that was one of the things that was really great, because one of the things we hate when you make a class is, okay, the biggest barrier of entry is like these programs are so expensive, and how can we as a school like eliminate that so you guys can instantly go and learn the stuff that you want to learn. And so that was cool. I didn't realize that about Houdini, is you can literally get in there and use it. It's kind of like Unreal Engine does the same thing.
Yeah, and
Unreal
Unity
Engine's
too,
free
I
actually,
think.
and Unity as well. Yeah, and I think that's really the wave of the future, I think. And I just wish Cinema 4D and all those guys would get on board with that, because that'd be awesome.
Someone in the chat is asking if Houdini Apprentice has limitations compared to the other versions.
Yeah.
It does, but they're pretty minimal. So Houdini Apprentice, it saves in its own file format, so like it's separate from like the professional version. You can't there's certain like file formats that you can't export. So like the indie and the full versions of Houdini have like an engine basically that connects to Cinema 4D and allows you to run your processes inside Cinema. The Apprentice version does not have that. So whatever you build has to be taken out of Houdini as like an OBJ file or whatever,
Yeah.
and then brought back into Cinema afterwards. Um, so it's a little bit limited that way, but in terms of like actual like features within Houdini, like being able to build things, it's has everything basically that the full version has. So you're not limited. Like you're not gonna like run into a tutorial on how to do something and then find out that you don't have that node or you don't have that tool.
Yeah, just a pain in the butt. It's pretty cool.
Oh, and it doesn't. Someone also mentioned it doesn't have the ability to use external renderers. So like you can't do like Octane for Houdini or anything like that. You can only use the built-in rendering engine. But like what I do is I just export my models as OBJ files, bring them into Cinema, and then do all my rendering from there. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really bother me. It's limiting if you want to do like actual VFX work and stuff, but if you're doing actual VFX work, you should probably pay
Pay
for
for
the
it
indie
anyways.
license or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But just for learning purposes, it's pretty amazing. So
Yeah. And if you are like curious about these programs and you want to just like, if your work is good and you're shredding at it and you really want to just kind of see if they will, like you can just reach out to them and say, hey, like, do you have sponsorship, or is there kind of discount or student discount or whatever? Like, go out there and ask. I mean, that's happened for me so many times where I'm like, okay, I need this program. It's cost X amount, and I'm not sure if I really want to spend that much money on it now. So I'll reach out to them and see if they'll be willing to give me a discount of some sort. And oftentimes they will, because they're human beings. And if they're not, that's fine. It is what it is. But this is
if
really
they're not
cool.
human beings,
If they're not human beings, that's not cool at all.
there's
So,
robots.
yeah. People love that mantra render too. So, and I've seen some incredible
Yeah, it's
stuff.
actually really, really like I haven't used it too much, but the results that people get with it are really nice.
Did you see that stuff that Serjan was putting out with that like sacred geometry stuff? It was
I
insane. He was
don't
using mantra
remember.
too, I think. Mantra, whatever how you pronounce it. But yeah,
Yeah,
he was just, dude, that stuff was insanity, the things he was making with this. So yeah. Yeah, there's so many different things. Look at this, all this procedural noise that you're putting on here. It's really cool. And the depth map and everything. How many polys is this?
a
Trillion.
lot.
Yeah.
Not, I mean, it's not
Nah.
that
Looks
crazy,
like
but it's pretty dense.
2 mil, maybe?
Probably
No.
something like
Yeah.
that. SolidWorks is really upset though. It
SolidWorks
doesn't
is
like it.
upset. Oh.
Yeah,
Oh.
it uses Houdini's using all of my my
SolidWorks.
memory, so it's
Oh.
like it's complaining.
uh, SolidWorks
But
is cranky.
this is cool because like some of the things you can do, for example, is you can create basically a connect this. You can create like an attribute that's based on like a noise function. So I have these like pink areas where they're just generated by noise, and the pink areas are where the displacement is going to happen. So I can create detail in certain areas and then have other areas be smooth. Um, Obviously, that's procedural too. So if I don't like where that stuff is happening, I can adjust it. I also have another curve where I should probably back up a layer before my computer explodes. But So you have this curve where you can also like basically or adjust the strength of that displacement
Oh, that's cool.
just by dragging it around, which is pretty nice. And then also, you can do some pretty crazy things with the noise. So if I go inside here, you can see that I actually have one noise function here, like a really simple one,
Yeah.
that's driving the frequency of another noise function. So basically, the frequency of the noise that's being generated with all this detail is variable depending on where it is, based on this noise function.
Hmm.
So you can kind of like layer your noise in different ways to create, more interesting results than what you would be able to get with just a basic noise function.
Hmm.
So
I wonder if you
it
brought this into, you exported it and then brought it into ZBrush and then ZRemesh or Dynamesh it, what that would do. Have you tried that yet to reduce the
No,
tolerance?
I don't really use ZBrush very much. So
That would
although
probably help
I
you
do
too.
have I have another I use what's it called, Mesh Lab, to do that same kind of
Oh,
process.
okay.
If you need to like decimate a model, what's
Yeah,
the term?
I think that's what it's called, Decimation Master.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna get
So
that guy on. I think it's Nick. We're gonna get him on the stream
who's
soon. He's
that?
gonna break that down, all his plugins and stuff that he makes for ZBrush. So he's gonna drop some. You should check that one out for sure. Because we're gonna talk about like taking high mesh and then converting it down. And Travis Davids came on the stream one time and he showed his whole process and it was pretty awesome too. He broke it all its goodness down. Yeah.
Someone was asking me about whether or not I can do all of the math stuff in Houdini, because Houdini is like very like a lot of the really like interesting things that Intagma is doing, and other people as well, are driven by like mathematical functions or
Yeah.
code.
Yeah.
Is Houdini like is all running on basically a programming language that you have access to. So someone was asking if I do any of that stuff, and the answer is yes, sort of.
The
I
calculator
was
out.
going to open an example. Where is that?
That's why I've stayed away from it. Math, no. It's powerful though. Yeah,
Oh, hold on a second.
no problem. While you're doing that, I'm going to start answering some questions because we got quite a few coming in. Question from last week, Ash, would you say V-Ray real time with GTX 1060 mobile is it worth to get a laptop for the GPU render? To be honest, I haven't used V-Ray RT, so I can't give you advice on that. But you know who does know that is Grant Warwick and Mache. Mache is going to be on the stream tomorrow at 1 o'clock, so I'd suggest coming out, bringing that question to him, and then letting him kind of run you through that because he's always talking about how V-Ray is the best and V-Ray this, V-Ray that. So there you go, and he can talk to you about that, and he'll upsell you on the V-Ray thing, anyways. But yeah, GPU I think is the future, and I would definitely invest in that if you're looking to get into 3D and rendering. Next question. Hey Ash, I've a question. My internship has declined today. I'm sorry to hear that. And I don't feel that my work is strong. What would you recommend on doing for the 10 weeks during the summer? How would you be learning for that time? Or maybe you would try getting the free internship or something. Yeah, I would spend every available moment, and I'm sure Tim could join me on that. I would spend every available moment that you have to spend learning and getting yourself better and looking at your work honestly and seeing where it's lacking, and then kind of getting better at understanding what you want to do and then how you're going to get there. So I think that if I were you, man, I wish I had 10 weeks. Man, that'd be so freaking epic if I had a 10-week sabbatical, and I need to go and take one of those soon, I think. So I'm getting kind of burnt out and I really need to re-up on all my goodness. But yeah, I would definitely write out a plan, stick to a daily schedule, and just learn and work and treat your time really focused and dedicated. And I would say you'd have a schedule and just like stick to it and spend at least 6 to 8 hours a day learning and practicing, so that by the time you're done with those 10 weeks, it's like an intense workout and you're like just ripped with knowledge. So yeah, that's what I would do. Okay, so here we are. You're in another file with the madness. Is this that stuff
Yeah.
that you
So
figured out, the Assassin's Creed stuff that Ryan and I were doing?
no, this is something different.
Okay.
I wanted to like get better at the programming side of Houdini, and I wanted to like pick something that I didn't have a tutorial for, just like some like simple simulation or something that I had found on the internet, and try to basically recreate it myself, from scratch using code just to see if I could do it. So this is actually a little simulation called Game of Life. And the way that Game of Life works is basically you just start with a grid, of boxes, right? And then you specify, basically certain boxes to be, uh, you have to set like an initial state. So like certain boxes are going to be one color and certain boxes are going to be another color. And then there's a set of rules that basically determine how these boxes evolve based on the other boxes that are close to them. So there's a solver here that basically takes in this initial set of boxes or points, and then runs them through the simulation step by step. And their end result is you get these really crazy, kind of evolving sort of patterns that almost look like they're alive, which is really cool.
Mm.
So if I show you what this is, just like a randomly generated start condition. But you can see like you get these really interesting little like, uh, sort of like they look like little microscopic organisms or something that just
Yeah.
like
So
kind
cool.
of react to one
Little
another.
sprites
Some
or
of them
something.
like, yeah, some of them kind of like wiggle around and like travel across the screen. Um, and you can create, simulations like this that run for I don't even know how long. Like people have figured out like how to create, like starting conditions that lead to simulations that go on for like really, really long time. And there are certain little like shapes that you can create that will essentially animate forever. Like they'll just go
Because it's based on
through
like a
like a loop.
math, right? The math of it. So just
Yeah,
constantly like repeating itself in a cycle or something.
exactly. And it's based on like it looks really complicated, but it's actually based on like a really simple set of rules. Which you can see like this is the if I can make this bigger, hold on a second.
That's what she said.
um,
Had to do it.
it's like this is the code that runs the entire simulation, and it's like the yellow stuff is just comments. But yeah, the rest of it is just basically looking at like how many neighbors, or not how many neighbors, but like looking at the neighbors around each pixel and counting how many of them are active. And then based on that, either the pixel becomes active itself or it becomes dead. And that's the entire simulation. There's just these a couple simple rules that are governing like if there's a certain number of pixels around me that are alive, I'm going to be alive, or if there aren't, I'm going to be dead, and that's it.
Hmm.
So I was able to figure that out relatively simply, and the end result is really fun to
Yeah.
watch,
It's
play with.
awesome.
It's like a little toy.
Yeah, no,
So
definitely. You're like creating worlds and stuff. It's so awesome. Yeah, it's awesome.
I'm still
Seeing how
not
this
very
would
good
really
at.
help with like game programming and stuff and level design and just like yeah, when I see this, I see so many different things. Like I see procedural art that you could use to design like posters or you could design like procedural textures and stuff and just endless amounts of stuff that you can do with this program. This one
It's a
really
black
opens it
hole.
up. I think that's what's crazy.
Yeah, that's why it's become like my favorite thing to mess around with, just because like you can kind of go in there, and once you've like gotten comfortable with like the basic premise behind it, like understanding like how to work with the nodes and like the different levels and different ways of information flowing from one thing to another, like you can kind of just go in there and play around and create some pretty cool stuff, just kind of improvising. So
Sick.
obviously for stuff like this you have to be a little bit more methodical about it and say like, okay, I have this specific problem that I need to break down and figure out the steps that need to happen for it to work properly. But it's
It's awesome.
there's a lot of stuff that you can do without getting that technical and just messing around. So
It's delicious. Well, we're coming up towards the end of it. If you guys have questions,
yep.
put them in the chat. Yeah, it's been awesome to show the kind of the journey and where you started from, where you got, and then where you're going. I think the goal was, and I think it's going to be difficult because you're designing a class and you work full time and everything. But the idea was that you were going to jump on with Michael Wrigley on his class and take that production and then have him help you, because it's easier to do the process when somebody's ushering you and there's expectations and you have due dates, so because if not, it'll just kind of float and it'll be like a never ending project, so
Yeah,
um,
my main priority right now is focusing on the class that I'm building, which I'm super excited about.
yeah.
But after that's over with, I'm gonna go back and hit this again.
Hit it. Question. We can probably answer both this one. It's directed towards me, but I think we could both answer it. Hey, Ash, got a question for you. What is your opinion on graduate school for 3D work? USC has a program for media arts and practicals that looks up my alley, but it would set me back a pretty penny. Is it worth the debt to have access to these great resources and facilities, or should I continue simply teaching myself online? I'm just afraid in a 2 years, when I finish undergrad, I won't be ready to enter the field. That's a legitimate question. It's a common question. That's something that keeps coming up a lot for everybody. And it's so hard for me to personally give that kind of advice because I don't know your work ethic, your ambitions, your goals, your drive, where you want to do. So as a blanket statement, I would say education isn't you. If there's ever anything you spend money on, it should be education, because it's the one thing that, like, why not? Like, it's the thing that will better you. It'll make you a stronger person. It'll make you more informed. It'll make you just a better person. So across the board, usually when it comes to me in education, it's like a no brainer. And if you, the reason why I would say that is that, let's say as a person you have X amount of skills and tools that you can provide to a studio or yourself, and when you go to get an education, hopefully if it's a good one and you have worthy teachers, and this is something that you can look into, I would suggest, like, if you're really serious about it, go research the facility and find out who the teachers are and see if there are teachers that you want to learn from, because a school is a school. A school is made of people, and those people are teachers, and based on the level of those teachers, that's going to be the success that you're going to have. Ollie is actually in the chat, and he had a great quote. I can't remember. If you're still here, you should remind me what it is. But you said, like, success is surrounding yourself with people that are better than you, that make you feel bad, or something like that. I forget the way you said it, but I mean, that's what you really want, right? I constantly try to surround myself with people that are better than me or can do things that I can't necessarily do, so that I can learn from them and get better, and then vice versa, and hopefully grow. So, um, but yeah, yeah, I think that's my thoughts on that. I think education, without a doubt, don't even think twice about it. If you have a doubt about it, which I understand it costs a lot of money. When I went to get educated, I got a lot of scholarships because I had good grades, and I was really like I was like very low in income, and I was kind of like impoverished, I guess. So yeah, so like all right, I'm sorry, I'm just reading the chat from Ollie, but yeah, so I would definitely suggest doing it, and research the instructors, and you can learn a lot of this stuff online. Like, look what Tim was talking about when he was explaining how he was doing a lot of the things that he was learning from Intagma. But you have to have it's one thing to learn it, it's another to apply it, and I think that's really the key difference here, is like, you got to be able to do that. So in 2 years, if you were to really apply yourself and treat yourself like every day to like 4 to 6 hours of education online, within 2 years you would be a beast. There's no doubt about it. But you could do 2 years at a graduate school and have them. Most of the time people pay to go to school because they don't have the self-discipline to have that regimen to go there, and that expectation. And that doesn't mean that you're not good. It just means that it's easier to do it that way, and that's why you pay them, because they're going to put you through the paces. So it's really up to you, and I can't necessarily say yes or no, but for me and my personal standpoint, it's always worth it for education, because you're just going to have a better skill, and that's going to make you a better person, which is going to make you more valuable to the world and yourself. So without a doubt, I imagine, Tim, you probably feel the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I could put it any better than that.
Yeah, nice. Okay. Ollie mentioned too, I think there's a danger in focusing too much on learning for the sake of learning. You fall down a very exciting hole, but you need to focus on a goal. Yes, and I couldn't agree with that more. I think I bring this up almost every stream, but the reason why I do personal projects is because I'm finding my weaknesses and I'm trying to exploit them by using the personal project as a goal to learn things, to put myself in adversity. so that I can apply and learn new things and stuff. Because I don't necessarily like. We had people on the other day, and we were talking like I do every day, but I keep them to myself and I don't share them with people. And I don't necessarily do it just to get the work out there. I do it because it's like little pieces of a bigger project, and I use those to put myself into weird situations. Like, oh, I've never used Houdini, for example, or whatever, or like I really suck at ZBrush, so I'm going to use this as a project to exploit my weaknesses so that I can go and get better at them and kind of use that as a tool and a device to do so. So I totally agree. And I think learning is only half of the step. The second part of it is applying it to something and having a goal that you can then focus on, So I'm sure Ollie knows that all about that because he's working on games and stuff and putting himself in adverse situations. And I know you're curious about Houdini and stuff. So should have you on sometime if you ever want to come on, Ollie. It would be great to have you. A question that
Yeah.
came in the chat is, do you ever lose ambition while you start learning, or had hard times, or got extremely lazy? Okay, Tim, I'll let Tim answer that, and then I'll chime in if I don't agree or whatever. So, yeah.
I've been extremely lazy before.
Really? I can't imagine
Yeah,
that. You
yeah.
seem to be
I'm
pretty
like,
active.
I'm
What do you
very,
do when you're lazy? What is the lazy thing? To Cheetos in the bed or something, or what?
no, no Cheetos in the bed, but actually just like watching lots of movies, playing
Oh,
some video games, stuff like that.
yeah.
But I'm very cyclical, I find, with like my creativity. I'm getting better about it now, like in the past year or so. But before that, like I would go through like phases where like I would spend maybe like 3 or 4 months being like super, super prolific and like working on stuff every day in learning. And I think when I was starting Learn Squared, like with UI and data design, I was in one of those modes where I was just like working all the time and super into it.
Yeah.
But then every once in a while, like I'll go through a period of like a month or so where I just don't, for whatever reason, like I just don't have it in me to like do anything. And I'm getting better about that now. Like I've kind of found a way to overcome that. And just through like practice and through like, routines, I guess, not feel that way anymore. But I used to for sure. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that comes from or like how to deal with that. But I think the best way to overcome it is just like create routines for yourself. And if you're not feeling super into it, like maybe just try and set aside a very small manageable amount of time every day to sit down and try to watch a tutorial or watch a live stream or mess around in some software. Even if you're not really trying to work on some big crazy project, like if you're having trouble finding motivation, I think it helps just to make sure that every single day you set aside just a little bit of time to you know just mess around and play with things. And hopefully the process of learning can be fun. And if it's not, then try learning something else.
Yeah. Sometimes
There's a
it's
million things
punishing.
you could do. So
Yeah.
like it's all about finding the thing that you're passionate about and that you really enjoy. So
Yeah, and you never know where that's going to take you too. And I would say, like, I think sometimes watching movies and playing video games, that shouldn't be frowned upon, because that's
oh
actually
no,
a lot
not
of
at
times
all.
that's where you get a lot of information and a lot of. Sometimes I'll just like watch like a random movie, or I'll just watch like Blade Runner over and over just to really pay attention to the use of light and the composition and why it feels beautiful to me, and study it. And I'll just watch it over and over and over and over until I just take it all in. But sometimes I think it's really important, because we're not designed to just go, 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 go. We're actually, from what I've understood from the stuff that I've read about the way that we work in our minds, is we're good at blasts and then rest, and blast and rest, blast and rest.
Yep.
Um, so it's not about just like full sprint, because that's how we burned out, but it's like we have a blast and then we rest. That's why we sleep. We regenerate every night, or at least some people. I didn't sleep much last night, so. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's really the key. I think it's finding something you love, and it's okay to be lazy at times. Just be really cognizant of those things. And I think laziness goes away naturally once you find something you love and get yourself lost in it, whatever it is. Collecting stamps, or oil painting, or collecting posters, or whatever, playing video games or something. The key is finding the things that you love and turning that into something that you could do that you then really enjoy. Okay, last question, and then we'll wrap it up. Ash, any advice on learning multiple things at once? It is it is good to learn a little at a time about a lot of programs and skills, or learning about a lot about one thing and putting all your focus into one thing. It's a really great question, and it's a really dynamic question, and I'll do my best to answer it. But what I would suggest is the process in which I work is that it's like Ollie was mentioning earlier. It's all about finding that goal. So knowing what goal, like what you want to do. So like, oh, I want to be UI artist, so I'll take that UI class. Or I really want to learn ZBrush, so I'll take Alex's class. But I would suggest like not just to learn it for learning's sake, but like to have a goal. Like, oh, I want to make a video game, or I want to make a 10-second short film, or I want to like be the most badass like ZBrush sculptor or something like that. It really a lot of it depends on feedback from you as in regards to the design and focus that you want to have in your life, and then everything comes from there. And so if you have the intention of the goal, I think that's really the key. And so like I said, my formula is I get inspired, I find a passion project I really like. One that's you guys are probably familiar with is the Ghost in the Shell thing. So I'll go and I'll put myself in like the director's chair and start figuring out how to communicate with people, and pulling all this talent together and directing the photo shoot, and then compositing everything together and like all that stuff. So just trying those different things out, using that as a muse, and then setting due dates and sticking to it. And that allows me to really focus and get things done and put myself through adverse situations that then allow me to be more well-rounded and diverse and stuff, which really helps, I think. So what about you, Tim? Do you have any last suggestions on that, and we'll wrap it up?
I don't know if I have anything to add, but I will say, on the note of video games, everyone should go try playing Tokyo 42, because I'm obsessed with it right now and it's really awesome.
Tokyo 42.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, let's see this. Oh, that's cool. It's like an isometric world.
But it's also an assassination game, so it's like cute and colorful, but also like your job is to go kill people. So
I'll check
it's really
it out.
fun. And the soundtrack to it is my favorite part. It's really nice.
Who did the sound for it?
Oh, I don't remember off the top of my head, but
Disaster Piece or something?
No, it's got a similar kind of feel to it though.
Yeah, it looks really cool. Looks like Monument Valley, but like just turned up a couple notches.
Yeah.
Is it a awesome PC platform?
Yeah, I think PC and maybe PlayStation, something like that.
Cool. I need to set up my PC to play games sometime. Switch it up. Yeah, this is really cool. It looks like a lot of fun. It just looks crazy. Yeah, it's sick. Yeah, I think I've said it before. I really firmly believe that the future is in games, game engines, and all that stuff. Because just think about it, it's just Moore's law. It's exponential. The game engines are gonna get better. Graphics are gonna get better. They're gonna be more immersive. You're gonna have VR and all that stuff. That's where things are gonna go, in my personal opinion. From what I'm seeing, I was just watching some other crazy stuff. There was this Lytro thing. Have you seen that Lytro emerge?
The camera?
Yeah, dude. Have you seen that thing?
Yeah.
Since
yeah.
Madness. Here, I'm gonna post a link for you guys to check this out. But yeah, it's just it's really epic, really crazy stuff. The Lytro camera is nuts. But like thinking about ways of capturing the real world and then augmenting it so you can create like endless amounts of experiences, and not only the real world, but like augmenting that real world and creating experiences through there. And thinking about like a tool not just for like entertainment, but let's say somebody has PTSD or they have a problem with something, you can put them through these simulations, to help them through these like trials and tribulations and stuff. And just, using the art to help people in a different way too, which could be really interesting. So beyond just being silly and, because a lot of this is it's like, it's fun, but it's like, where's the point and the purpose of it, so.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Thank you, Tim. I got to go back to work. Awesome. You did an amazing job. Thank you for coming on here. You're welcome anytime. We know you're making a class. So, you come on anytime you want. And let's definitely, let's make this happen. Let's keep doing it. It's going to be awesome.
Sweet.
And, if you have any last words for anybody.
I was just going to say, thank you so much for having me back. Everybody should be powerful and be prolific, and peace out.
That's the podcast. Yeah, that's what I'm supposed to say.
I'm stealing it. I'm stealing it because I love it.
Yeah, be powerful, be prolific. Peace out. Okay, everybody, have a great day, and we'll see you on the next stream. Mache will be here tomorrow at 1 o'clock. It's going to be awesome. Don't miss it. We'll see you guys on the next one. Have an amazing day, everybody. Peace.
See you guys.